So it's been a couple weeks since the Kendrick and Drake beef ended. As a rap fan, I was very excited to see two of my favorite rappers battle it out after years of sneak dissing each other. And as all of us saw, it was probably the best rap beef since Nas vs Jay-Z. However, it was a battle between two of the most toxic fan bases in rap. I'm a fan of both Kendrick and Drake. They both end up on the top 3 of my Spotify Wrapped every year, but this was the worst possible situation for fans. The beef has been over for a couple weeks now, and there's still debate on who really won between the fan bases. Now, the general consensus was that Kendrick completely destroyed Drake, but of course there are Drake fans that believe that it was the other way around. Because of this, and because of the tracks that both artists put out, after a while the beef became a toxic mess of figuring out who really won and who had the better songs. As a fan of both, I was leaning more towards Kendrick getting the side of the beef because he's my favorite rapper. But I want to give my full thoughts on the whole entire beef and who had the better disses and songs and who I really think won. So let's get started. Just a little background on this whole beef. This whole thing started with Kendrick's verse on Like That on March 22nd, 2024, which shook up the rap game for a couple of weeks. Everyone was waiting for Drake's response, but within that, we got a response from J. Cole on April 7th, who ultimately bowed out of the beef a couple of days later, which just left Kendrick and Drake.
At the end of the day, when I listen to it and when it comes out and I see the talk, that shit don't sit right with my spirit. That shit make me feel, that shit disrupts my fucking peace.
Which was probably the best choice by J. Cole considering what we saw go down with those two. But 3 weeks later after the Like That verse on April 13th, Drake somewhat responded with a diss track which was actually leaked, leaving fans not knowing whether it was AI generated or real. I personally believe that Drake leaked this diss track himself to get people's thoughts on it before officially releasing it, but that's just a theory. He would officially release it on April 19th with the finished version titled Push-Ups. After Push-Ups was released, Drake would release another diss track the same day called Tailor-Made Freestyle, in which he controversially used the AI voices of Tupac and Snoop Dogg, basically telling Kendrick to hurry up and drop a diss track. Kendrick would come back almost 2 weeks later on April 30th with his diss track titled Euphoria, which was the official start of the beef. But Kendrick wouldn't stop, as a couple of days later on May 3rd, he released a diss track called 616 in LA, basically telling Drake that there are moles in his own circle. Drake will respond the exact same day with a diss track titled Family Matters, but not even 30 minutes after that, Kendrick would drop another diss track titled Meet the Grams. This was the official turning point in the beef and when people actually started to question the accusations of both artists, which I will get into later. However, Kendrick wasn't done, as literally a day later on May 4th, he would drop his final diss track in the beef titled Not Like Us. The final response came from Drake a day later on May 5th with his final diss track titled The Heart Part 6, which ended the beef since there has been no diss tracks made since then. As a rap fan, this was definitely the most entertaining month and a half ever, as we were getting so much new music from two of the best artists in the world. May 3rd should go down as a national holiday because this was easily the best day in rap history. However, during this, like I said in the intro, both fanbases were arguing on who was winning at the time. So now I'd like to break down the context of each track released and give my thoughts to determine who really won. So to start with Push-Ups, I thought it was a good response to Kendrick's Like That verse. Drake basically hops on this song and criticizes Kendrick for not being in control of his own music, as he has a contract with his former record label Top Dog Entertainment to get 50% of the revenue of all the new music that he drops, which is the theme of the entire song with Push-Ups. That actually taught me something that I didn't know regarding Kendrick. The song is actually funny, as he pokes fun at Kendrick's height many times throughout the song, and as the main lyric people remember from the song, how the F you big steppin' with a size 7 men's on. He also comes at Kendrick for doing corny mainstream songs with other artists like Taylor Swift and Maroon 5 in order to cater to that audience. He also references the Big 3 conversation that was first introduced in the song with J. Cole, First Person Shooter. It says that Kendrick isn't even in that conversation, with artists like SZA, 21 Savage, and Travis Scott all clearing him. He also claims that Kendrick's last album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, wasn't a good album. Most people agreed that this song was a good response to what Kendrick had said on Like That, but people mostly liked it for the fact that Drake took shots at many other artists like Rick Ross, Metro Boomin, and Future, which is a whole different conversation that I will get into much later in the video. Now we get into Tailor-Made Freestyle, which I'm gonna say right now is the worst song in the whole beef, and I think everyone agrees with that. In this song, Drake basically says that Kendrick is owned by Taylor Swift, as he supposedly waited for Taylor Swift to drop her album before he released his diss track. Not only that, but he uses the AI voices of Tupac and Snoop Dogg, basically telling him that he needs to respond to Drake as soon as possible and be the West Coast savior that he has been crowned as for the past decade. He also uses these voices to say that Kendrick is not a real gangster like he claims to be, and that he already knows everything that Kendrick is about to say, so he basically doesn't even need to respond. When I first heard this track, I was convinced that Drake was cooking Kendrick at this point, but when I really thought about it, it was lame how he took the AI voice of a dead man and made it seem like he was telling him that he needs to respond. Taking the voice of Snoop Dogg was also lame too, as he is still alive and he would not say anything that Drake said about Kendrick in the song. It doesn't make sense how he tried to get on Kendrick for supposedly moving his diss track because of Taylor Swift's album dropping, but then at the end of the song says that he moved his album one time because Taylor Swift was dropping the same day as him. It was also corny that he was trying to rush Kendrick to get him to drop a diss track when it took him 3 weeks to respond to Kendrick's Like That verse. Overall, this song just ended up making Drake look stupid, as people didn't even really like this song and still think that it is the worst song in the beef. He also had to take the song down off of Instagram after a threat from Tupac's estate. And I still think that he did this to try to get the one-up on Kendrick, to switch the narrative and try to do what Drake does best, troll. Now to Kendrick's Euphoria, which was his first response in the beef. In his first response, he opens with a reverse quote from the movie The Wiz, where The Wiz says everything they say about me is true. Kendrick then proceeds to rip on Drake for being a master manipulator and telling lies, which spawned the iconic "Don't tell no lies about me and I won't tell truths about you" line. Kendrick's main claims include that Drake only uses black culture when it benefits him, constantly questioning his blackness and even his sexuality because of the way that he acts, paying out $500K for a sexual assault case, which I had no idea about. He emphasizes how much he hates Drake, how Drake's in a cease and desist on Like That, how Drake is trying to step up to him but couldn't even give a direct response to Pusha T, how he doesn't know whether he's actually battling Drake because of his ghostwriters, and people not even believing that the Push-Ups League was real, but instead AI. He also talks about Drake's fatherhood to his son Adonis, and just completely attacks Drake's manhood. He also makes a really good point on how everything that he's saying in the song is what people within the rap community also feel about him, which circles back to the "everything they say about me is true" line from the intro. He even makes fun of Drake's Toronto accent. This 6-minute diss completely shifted the beef from friendly competition to up and personal really quick, as Kendrick let everyone know his issues with Drake. And this song was also really funny with a lot of one-liners, and it sounds like Kendrick wasn't even taking it seriously, but still went off. In my opinion, this blew Push-Ups out of the water, as Kendrick's disses were a lot more personal and clever. The more you listen to it, the more you learn about what he was really saying. So Kendrick goes 1-0 over Push-Ups, since Kendrick had the better disses and only focused on Drake. Then we move on to 616 in LA, which is a reference to Drake's time-marked song titles that he has in every album that he drops. This isn't even really a diss track, but since it's a part of this whole beef, I have to include it. A lot of people who didn't really like Euphoria gravitated more towards this song because they believed that it was a better sounding song. In this song that Kendrick posted on his Instagram just like Drake did with Taylor Made, he basically says that he has to go to war with Drake and that Drake is still going to continue to lie. He then makes a point and says that there is a mole within the OVO camp that is feeding him information about Drake and that everyone around him thinks that he deserves everything that is coming to him. He brings back the point of Drake paying people to find dirt on his opponents, as he did that for Pusha T and came back with nothing, and Kendrick insinuates that the same thing happened here. This was the first official turning point in the beef, as Kendrick made a wild accusation that someone within Drake's own circle has been feeding him information and that he shouldn't even keep going. There's not much to say about this song since he only spends half the song dissing Drake, but I don't even have to say that this song put Kendrick up 2-0 on Drake compared to Taylor Made Freestyle, as 616 was a much better song and diss, and Taylor Made Freestyle was just a disgrace. Next is easily Drake's best response, diss, and song, coming in the form of Family Matters. Admittedly, I did not really like this song as a diss when I first heard it, but the more that I listen to it, the more that I love it as a diss track and a song. This song is a continuation of the ending of Push-Ups, as Drake goes completely red button on Kendrick and says that once again Kendrick is a fake gangster and mentions other artists who are actually a part of gangs. He completely comes at Kendrick for acting as an activist for the black community and for his hometown of Compton, but not actually giving back to his community. How Kendrick advocates for black people but married a mixed woman. How Kendrick has sex with a white woman to feel better about himself. And that one of Kendrick's kids is actually the kid of Kendrick's manager, Day Free. This was probably the biggest blow Drake had brought to the beef at this point, but then the beef switches as he spends the whole second verse dissing Rick Ross, Future, The Weeknd, Metro Boomin, and A$AP Rocky, which is one of the strongest parts of the song for me. I actually love the second verse on this song. The beat paired with him going in on these other artists is one of the highlights of this song. The only thing he really says about Kendrick in this verse is that Baby King is a ghostwriter for Kendrick, but the third verse is where Drake provides his biggest blow of the beef. He completely empties the clip and he makes the allegation that Kendrick physically abuses his wife Whitney and that he proposed to her in 2015 but has still not married her. The part about them not being married I had no idea about, as I always thought that they were married. He also claims that Kendrick moved to New York in order to be with other women and live the bachelor life, since Kendrick has had issues with cheating in the past and that Kendrick and Whitney aren't even together at the moment. As crazy as this allegation was, it was the start of something that bothered me about this whole beef, but I will get into that later. Overall, Family Matters was an amazing diss track, and the more that I listen to it, the more that I love it. The music video was also very fire, with Drake crushing the Good Kid, Mad City van. This is going to be a hot take, but I think it had the potential to be better and more iconic than Back to Back. Except, literally not even 30 minutes after Family Matters dropped, Kendrick dropped another diss track on YouTube titled Meet the Grams. We literally had no time to breathe and fully digest it. This song is easily the best diss track in the entire beef. There's literally no debate. The eerie piano beat makes this song sound like a whole funeral rather than a diss track. People aren't going to agree with me here, but Meet the Grams is easily a top 3 diss track in history. I literally teared up listening to this diss track. I remember literally re-listening and dissecting Family Matters with my friend Jacory on the phone, but then I heard that Kendrick had dropped again, so we both stopped what we were doing and listened to it, but we didn't say anything the whole time. He literally hung up on me after the song was over because he had to process what he just heard. Kendrick goes full demon mode on this song. He starts off by directly talking to Drake's son Adonis. The moment I heard Dear Adonis, I knew it was over. He literally talks to Adonis apologizing that Drake had to be the guy who was his father and that he could be his mentor since Drake doesn't teach him anything. He doubles back on the rumor that Drake got ab surgery rather than just working out for them. Kendrick completely dismantles Drake from the beginning, telling Adonis not to be like his father and be ashamed of his baby mama, who's a porn star, or not to let another man pee on his leg, which is a reference to a situation where one of fellow rapper T.I.'s friends allegedly peed on Drake's leg during a movie premiere and Drake did nothing about it. But this isn't even the worst part. Kendrick then starts talking to Drake's parents, Sandy and Dennis Graham, in the second verse and blames them for raising such a horrible person. He brings up again how Drake is a master manipulator and how he has a gambling addiction, how he hates black women, and has sex offenders with an OVO and brings his son around them. Then goes as far to say that Drake himself is a pedophile because of his weird history with underage celebrities, and that other famous celebrities like LeBron James and Steph Curry and others around him should keep their children away from him. In the third verse, Kendrick reveals the most shocking part of the track, where he reveals that Drake is hiding another child. This was the most shocking allegation within the entire beef, as we thought Drake had made the same mistake twice. However, now we know that this was a lie, as Drake denied it immediately, and there was no name mentioned like there was with Adonis. This is the only L I feel like Kendrick took in this entire beef, because that was a serious allegation to make just for it to not be true. However, with Drake being notorious for hiding Adonis and constantly bragging about how many women he sleeps with, it was easy to believe this allegation. But ultimately, it just wasn't true. But Kendrick just goes on and on about how his dad probably didn't claim him, which is why he repeats the same behavior, and how he pays prostitutes for sex while constantly taking drugs. The ending of the third verse with Kendrick saying "in an effing deadbeat that should never say more life" is one of the hardest lyrics of the entire beef, and it gives me chills every time I hear it. The fourth and final verse ends with Kendrick just talking to Drake himself, as he alleges that Drake has a drinking problem, a pill popping problem, gambling problem, money spending problem, and how he just wants to be liked and accepted so bad. The last couple of lines where Kendrick uses voice filters and goes on about how many things Drake has lied about is a highlight of this song for me, and him ending the song by saying "F a rap battle, this is a long life battle with yourself" just makes it more haunting, as it feels like this isn't even about rap anymore. There's so much layers within the song that I didn't even get to touch on a lot of what was said, but that's how disrespectful and great this diss track is. This song doesn't even feel like a diss track, it feels more like a therapy session as he talks to every member of his family about how many problems he has. It makes it all worse when you realize that the cover of this song is a bunch of items that were allegedly Drake's, such as pills, which just adds on to what Kendrick is saying in this song. This is easily the best diss track of the beef, despite a lot of the narratives around it. And it was at this point that I thought that Drake had officially lost, and that there was nothing that he could say or do to come back and win. It was 3-0 at this point, and I thought there was no way it could get worse. Literally a day later, Kendrick dropped Not Like Us, which is the most popular song in the entire beef and still has the world in a chokehold a month later. Kendrick hops on a West Coast beat and continues to allege that Drake is a pedophile because of his weird history with underage girls, and that many of his team members are also in the same boat, such as Baca, who is a security guard for Drake that was arrested and imprisoned for human trafficking. The cover art shows Drake's house with a bunch of sex offender dots on him, and he spends the majority of this song saying how Drake messes with young women, which has been a recurring rumor surrounding Drake for the past couple years, with his weird relationships with female celebrities such as Millie Bobby Brown and Kylie Jenner when they were both underage. This track is filled with a lot of creative disses and one-liners. Other than the pedophile lines, Kendrick challenges Drake's blackness once again by listing a bunch of rappers that he thinks he used in order to push his career and make himself look more black. He also talks about how Drake messed with Lil Wayne's girlfriend while he was in jail, then got a tattoo of him trying to make up for it, which I didn't know either. This song is a club banger that isn't even meant to be taken seriously, yet it is the one that people are streaming and quoting the most out of this whole beef. The fact that Kendrick's last song of the beef ended up being the most popular one is insane, considering it's not even the best diss. Kendrick has the world saying OV ho and constantly bumping a diss track that is aimed at Drake like it is a regular song. This is going to be the song that I remember the most in the beef because of the disses and just how good it is. At this point, I didn't think that Drake was going to respond, but he eventually answered back with another diss track titled The Heart Part 6, which is a reference to Kendrick's The Heart series, in which Kendrick always drops a song titled The Heart Part blank before dropping an album. This was the last and final diss track of the entire beef, and while I think it is a good track, there are so many questionable lyrics here that make Drake's credibility so much more questionable than it already is. Well, I do like the track because it's one of the only tracks where he goes after Kendrick directly and he has decent bars in the song. It ruined his chances at winning this beef. His biggest claim in the song is that Kendrick is pushing the pedophile angle so much because he was molested as a child, which is absolutely false. He then proceeds to say that everything he said in the diss track so far was the truth, but then proceeds to tell blatant lies. For reference, Drake references Kendrick's song Mother I Sober, in which Kendrick talks about how his mother was sexually abused as a child and constantly asked Kendrick if any of his family members had did the same to him. He always denied it, but she wouldn't believe him because of generational trauma. This just proves Kendrick pointing in the opening verse of Euphoria, in which he says, "Fabricating stories on the family front cause you heard Mr. Morale." Drake also mentions the big surprise that he and people from his camp planted a mole to feed Kendrick information regarding the alleged daughter and the items in the Meet the Grams cover. This seemed like the truth at first, as Kendrick never responded to it, but then a week later an unknown Twitter account by the name of Ebony Prince 2K24 revealed proof that they had the items on the Meet the Grams cover and that they were retrieved at a hotel that Drake was staying at in January of 2023, with photo and video evidence. Now, I'm not going to act like this is completely relevant and proves anything, but it is crazy that Drake claims to have had planted the items for Kendrick, but then somebody comes out against Drake with the items and says that there was no mole. It also doesn't make sense how Drake was saying that the people Kendrick is getting his info from are clowns, but then proceeds to say that he planted the information with his team. However, the mole might not be that far off though regarding the daughter, as that was proven to be false and Kendrick fell for that with no proof to show for it. But this track just made Drake look bad because he was practically playing defense the whole time, saying that he's not a pedophile, but if he was, he would have been arrested by now, which is a very questionable thing to say. But I do like how he questions why Whitney didn't respond to the abuse allegations, which just helps his case of them being true. I also respect how he titled it The Heart Part 6, which will probably change Kendrick's formula when he drops another album. Like I said, I like this song, but it's just filled with a lot of questionable lines, and it's just obvious lies that prove Kendrick's point of his earlier diss tracks. And I also don't like how he goes on a whole villain speech at the end of the song as if everything he just said was facts and act like Kendrick wasn't even a worthy competitor. When let's face it, after this track and the success of Not Like Us, Kendrick won this beef, 4-0. This is the section of the video where I just give my reasoning for why Kendrick won. I truly believe the only diss that even competes with any of Kendrick's disses is Family Matters, and even then, the only diss that I feel like it's better than is 616 in LA. This video was probably the most unbiased I've been when talking about this whole beef. I'm not gonna sit here and act like Drake didn't even compete with Kendrick. He put up a way better fight than I expected, because prior to this beef, I thought that Drake stood no chance against Kendrick, which I still think is the case because Kendrick is just a better rapper than Drake. Watching Drake fans try to cope with the fact that he was getting destroyed was honestly the most annoying part of this beef. They believe everything that he said, but then discredit everything that Kendrick said. But I will say this right now, Kendrick fans and Drake haters were doing the exact same thing, and that leads me into my main issue with this beef and why after the Heart Part 6 was released, I was just over it. After Family Matters and Meet the Grams dropped, this whole beef became about who was lying and who was telling the truth, which has never been the objective of a rap battle. Drake fans would say that Kendrick was lying about the daughter and other claims, and Kendrick fans would say that Drake was lying about the wife beating allegations, when none of us as fans personally know either of these rappers, and there was no proof to any of it. I feel like after Pusha T exposed Drake for hiding a kid, people put the idea in their head that everything that's said in a diss track has to be true, or else it means nothing. Do you think when Tupac said "that's why I effed your girl" to Biggie at the start of Hit 'Em Up, that he was telling the truth just because he said it? Still to this day, we don't know if that's true, but Hit 'Em Up is considered one of the best diss tracks ever because of everything else that Tupac said. The amount of Drake fans that I've heard say that Meet the Grams is a trash diss track just because he lied about the daughter is crazy, considering that Drake made equally crazy allegations saying that Kendrick beats his wife in Family Matters. Or the amount of people that say that Family Matters isn't good because Drake lied about the wife beating allegations. Neither allegations have proof behind them, but yet both sides believed it immediately and tried to discredit both diss tracks for lying when there were a lot more great disses that made an impact between both rappers. Both rappers lied in their tracks, so that shouldn't stop people from being fair and disregarding everything else that they said. But enough ranting, let me get into the 3 main reasons why I believe that Kendrick beat Drake. Number 1. He beat Drake at his own game. As each track was coming out, many Drake fans' reasoning for why Kendrick was losing was because Drake was making songs that you could play at a club or in the car, while Kendrick was making songs that had no replay value and you couldn't really understand them. This narrative was stupid from the start, considering that the sole purpose of diss tracks aren't songs that are meant to be played in the car or at a club. The purpose of a diss track is to lyrically break down and humiliate your opponent in a song, and Kendrick did just that. And what I mean by Kendrick beat him at his own game is that Drake's first 2 officially released songs, Push Ups and Family Matters, were 2 greatly produced songs that could be played at the club or in the car with the homies. Kendrick did 2 lyrical songs breaking down Drake, then for his final song, hopped on an actual club beat and made the most quotable and popular diss out of the whole beef. Not Like Us is talked about and played more than Family Matters and Push Ups combined. Kendrick also beat him at what Drake fans value so much, the numbers. Drake fans love to brag about how much he sells, but legitimately every diss track that Kendrick put out outsold Drake's. Not Like Us literally broke the record on Spotify for the most played rap song in 24 hours, and Drake fans are saying, oh well, Kendrick only getting those numbers because he's talking about Drake. But if that was the case, then why isn't Drake getting the same numbers when he has more fans? It doesn't make sense, right? And I firmly believe that Kendrick was a step ahead of Drake the whole time. And what I mean by that is that there was really a mole within OVO. Why I believe that this is the case is because before Meet the Grams, Drake had not mentioned his family. Unless you include the line in Push Ups where he said I be with bodyguards like Whitney, which was an obvious double entendre, but it wasn't something major. And of course Meet the Grams was a response to Family Matters, but he dropped it within 30 minutes after it coming out, meaning he had to have probably heard the song before it even came out and recorded a song in response to it and waited for Drake to drop it. Drake hadn't even mentioned stuff with Whitney or his kids in Push Ups or Taylor Made Freestyle. Kendrick even said in Euphoria, we can go there if you want to, and that was before Family Matters even came out. Then in Meet the Gram said that Drake had messed up because he had mentioned his family. I could just be out of the loop on something, but let me know if I am. Reason number 2, Kendrick just had the better bars and disses. The most important part of the beef is being looked over, and that is the fact that Kendrick simply out-rapped Drake in every aspect. The wordplay, the disses, the flows, everything. Almost everything that Kendrick said, there was always a double meaning to it. Also everything that Drake said, Kendrick had a rebuttal for it. A narrative that I kept seeing during this beef was that Drake was making better sounding songs than Kendrick and that's why he was winning. But they're ignoring the fact that it doesn't matter who has the better song in a beef, it matters on who has the better diss tracks. I'll give this as an example. I believe that Rap Devil by MGK was a better song than Killshot by Eminem, but Killshot was the better diss track by far, which is the objective of a rap battle, and that's why everyone is saying that Eminem won that beef. I admit that Drake's songs were easier to listen to and digest, but when it came down to Kendrick's diss tracks, a lot more people were dissecting and breaking down his rather than Drake's. I'm not gonna act like Drake didn't have good bars and disses because he did. He had bars that went over many people's heads too. But the problem is that not even all of those bars were aimed towards Kendrick, but instead at other people. And that was my main issue with both Drake's major disses in Push Ups and Family Matters. He kept going after other people alongside Kendrick to try and further spin the narrative that it was a 20v1. It felt like he had a lot of crazy bars and disses towards other people that weren't Kendrick. For example, Drake went absolutely crazy on A$AP Rocky on Family Matters and continued to go at Future, Metro, and Rick Ross throughout the entire verse. He literally spent the whole second verse of the quote-unquote red button Kendrick diss talking about other people. Now to give Drake the benefit of the doubt, all those people were sneak dissing Drake on We Don't Trust You and We Still Don't Trust You, but the beef we all actually cared about was between him and Kendrick. Nobody cared if Drake went at Rick Ross or Metro Boomin, who doesn't even rap. And of course Drake fans were also using that narrative as to why he was winning, say, oh well Push Ups was better than Euphoria because he went after multiple people, or Drake is clutching at 20v1. So what? We listened to the song to hear him talk about Kendrick because that's who started this whole thing. He wasn't beating Kendrick by talking about other people. Overall, Kendrick had the more impactful bars and disses as he lyrically broke Drake down and beat him with his lyrics. And the third and final reason, Kendrick won this beef culturally. Since this beef ended, the overall global consensus has been that Kendrick won the beef. Of course Drake fans are saying that he won, but I'm seeing more Drake fans say that Kendrick won the beef than Kendrick fans saying that Drake won. Even Drake's biggest writer, DJ Academics, said that he lost his beef. Kendrick's songs are also just having a bigger cultural impact than Drake's are. I'm not really hearing people other than Drake fans talk about his diss tracks. Even people that aren't fans of either rapper are saying that Kendrick won. Kendrick's songs have been a lot more culturally impactful and memorable. Not Like Us is going to be considered the song that everyone remembers from this beef because of the A minor and OV ho lines alone. If the whole world is screaming OV ho and calling you a certified pedophile, then you simply lost the beef. Literally food places that have been mentioned in Kendrick's diss tracks are benefiting off this. We all know about the new Ho King restaurant in Canada that had a crazy surge in business after Euphoria was released. They even named one of their dishes the Kendrick Lamar special because of it. Keep in mind this is in Canada, Drake's own country, the place where people are supposed to mess with him the most. Drake's OVO store in London even got vandalized with the words "they not like us" tagged on it. All of Kendrick's disses have left some sort of cultural impact that people are still talking about after the beef ended, while Drake's songs haven't really been quotable other than a couple lines. Where Drake also messed up was him getting on social media and trolling Kendrick and letting everybody know that he was gonna drop a song. Family Matters was supposed to be the red button where he emptied the clip, and he let everybody know that before it even came out, while Kendrick stayed silent and dropped every time when you least expected it. It probably would have done more damage if he just dropped out of the blue instead of trying to prep us for it. Despite all the different narratives and opinions, this beef is gonna go down in history, and it's gonna be talked about for decades just like the ones that came before it. Even though I'm a Kendrick fan and knew that Kendrick was gonna win before the battle even started, I gave Drake a fair chance throughout the beef. After re-listening to all of the songs multiple times in preparation for the video, I think Drake did a lot better than people gave him credit for. The woman beater allegations actually stuck for a lot of people, and a lot of people criticized Kendrick for it, but they were overshadowed by the pedophile allegations by Kendrick. Everything Drake said about Kendrick came back stronger with disses and bars that made people forget about what Drake had said. Now this beef isn't gonna dethrone Drake or stop him from selling or anything like that, because there will always be Drake fans no matter what. But this beef proved that Drake is not untouchable like everyone thinks he is, and that he's definitely not the best rapper in the world, and is definitely at the bottom of the big three. I do appreciate this beef because it made Drake rap the best he's ever rapped in years, and I feel like Drake hasn't made a great album in the past 5 or 6 years, but I literally don't care who you're a fan of or whose side you're on. You cannot tell me that Drake won this beef. I'm sorry. If people are probably gonna say, oh well, you're a Kendrick fan, so of course you think he won, you just hate Drake. No, I think Kendrick won as a rap fan. Kendrick simply just out-rapped him and lyrically exposed him, and the whole world is singing along right with it. That alone just shows who really won this beef.